Hello, I have a story for you to sleep better. Come closer, and let the story begin.
Kaelan Ashford had once been a paladin of the light. Now he was something else. Not because the light had abandoned him, but because this war demanded more than faith. It demanded order, intelligence, sacrifice, and at times the strength to stand between the Alliance and the Horde when old hatred threatened to tear open new wounds. On the day of the broken shore, the sky burned green. Dalaran hovered on the horizon like a festering wound in the air. Fell clouds rolled in from the sea, exhaling rot onto the coastline, corrupting even the stone beneath the soldiers' boots. As the fleets approached the shore, hundreds of eyes stared outward. Alliance banners snapped in the wind. Horde standards fluttered beside them. Different flags, this same fear. Kaelan stood near the front lines when King Varian Rin disembarked. Up close, the king did not look like a symbol. He looked like a man carrying the weight of an entire age. Nearby, Vol'jin watched in silence, his expression unreadable, as though some unseen crack had already formed within him. Before the first charge, Archmage Khadgar pulled Kaelan aside. The wizard's hands trembled. A man who could hold a city aloft did not tremble without reason. Kaelan, Khadgar said, lowering his voice, one mistake and the world burns. This is not just golden, this is a door. And behind that door is his breath. Sargeras. Even the name felt colder than the fell wind. Maeve Shadowsong passed them without slowing. Wardens did not linger. If she felt doubt, it was buried beneath discipline and iron. Golden will reach the tomb, she said flatly. If he succeeds, this shore will only be the beginning. Moments later, the sea screamed. Fell reavers thundered onto the beach, their metal limbs striking the ground as if they walked upon bone rather than sand. Each step shook the earth. Soldiers tightened their grips, knuckles whitening. Legionfall formation, Kaelan shouted. Hold the lines. Healers center. Archers left flank. Blades with me. The name Legionfall had not been planned. It was born in that instant, when every warrior understood they were no longer fighting for victory. They were fighting to endure. For a brief, dangerous time, the advance held. Demon lines buckled. The Legion seemed to recoil. False hope is the most lethal weapon of war. Then the sky split open. From the portal poured a tide, so vast it felt as if the universe itself had inhaled backward. One demon fell. To replace it, to fell, and more followed. The numbers grew meaningless. This was not an army. It was an extinction. That was when Kaelan saw Tyrion Fordering. The High Lord of the Argent Crusade stood chained, wounded, yet unbroken. For years his name had been spoken like scripture. Ashbringer, light's hope, honor given flesh. Golden's voice slithered across the battlefield, every word steeped in corruption. With a gesture, he summoned a demon lord, and fell fire descended. When Tyrion fell, the world seemed to fracture. No one screamed. Screaming required breath. Instead, there was only silence filled with clenched teeth, tightening armor, and blades gripped hard enough to draw blood from bare hands. The battle ceased to be a battle, it became a vow. Then the trap closed. Above the Horde lines, the sky filled with Legion ships, a wall of wings and fire. Sylvanas Windrunner's order rang out, sharp and desperate. Retreat. The Horde fell back. from the Alliance perspective, it looked like betrayal. On the ground, Kaelan saw something else entirely. A defensive line collapsing beneath an endless tide. A choice between death and survival. But war rarely leaves time for understanding. Varian Wren refused to withdraw. Kaelan stepped forward, intent on stopping him, but Khadgar caught his arm. Sometimes, the Archmage said quietly, a king chooses to die so his people may live. Varian walked alone toward the fell Reaver. His footsteps looked impossibly heavy, as though the stones themselves strained to remember them. The Reaver fell. The gunship rose. The Alliance escaped. Varian remained. He raised his blade one last time. Demons drove him to his knees. Gul'dan's voice drifted across the shore like smoke. You will be remembered as the king who sacrificed his life for nothing. That was the moment Kaelan Ashford learned that hatred could feel warm. Organizing the survivors fell to Kaelan. Some soldiers stared back into the green storm and whispered that the war was already lost. Others looked at their hands, unsure if they still belonged to them. Kaelan drove his sword into the sand. It ends nowhere else, he said. It begins here. Stormwind drowned in grief. The Horde lost Vol'jin. Both factions bled, and the Legion fed on every drop. In Dalaran, Kaelan witnessed the fractures within the Council of Six. Jaina Proudmoore prepared to leave. Her gaze sharp and wounded like a broken blade, still shining, no longer cutting. Then Magni Bronzebird arrived. Once stone, now flesh, now voice. Azeroth is a world soul, Magni declared, a sleeping titan. The Legion seeks to kill it before the Void can corrupt it. In cet moment de war BQ conflicts, Van Rus. Kill the universe, or rot it from within. Khadgar unrolled a map across the table, the broken isles. The pillars of creation, he said. Without them, the tomb cannot be sealed. Kaelan studied the islands. They were no longer places. They were secrets, buried beneath 10,000 years of ruin. That night, he recorded a single line in the Legionfall annals. Legionfall was born not from the light alone, but from the vow of those who walk into fear and do not turn away. At dawn, he stood at the head of the first ships bound for the Broken Isles, not merely as a commander, but as the witness who would carry the story forward. Around the camp, armor lay scattered, some dented, some cracked, some still stained with green-black fell that no amount of scrubbing would ever fully remove. The Broken Isles were quiet that night, but it was the kind of quiet that listens back. Kaelan Ashford stood near the fire, his silhouette stretched long across the rocks. He had not removed his gauntlets. Few had, since the shore, touching bare skin to the ground, still felt wrong. As if the land itself remembered what had walked upon it. Broken Shore had not ended the war. It had stripped away illusion. In Dalaran, Khadgar had spoken of strategy, of artifacts, of ancient seals and forgotten powers. But here, among soldiers who watched the flames instead of the sky, the truth was simpler. The Legion had learned how to win. They did not break armies. They broke certainty. A raven landed on a stone near the fire, feathers slick with mist. A warden's mark hung from its leg. My Eve, Shadowsong's seal. Kaelan took the message without a word. He did not read it immediately. Wardens did not send messages unless something had already gone wrong. When he finally unfolded the parchment, the firelight danced across the words. The vault of the Wardens has been breached. A murmur rippled through the camp. Even those who could not read felt the weight shift. Names like that carried memory, fear, history. The vault of the Wardens was not a fortress. It was all built to hold what could not be, what should never walk free again. Maeve arrived before dawn, as she always did. She did not announce herself. She simply appeared at the edge of the firelight, cloaked in shadow, eyes sharp and sleepless. The Legion came for Illidan Stormrage, she said. No flourish, no emotion, just truth. Some of the soldiers shifted. Even now, the name carried poison, betrayer, monster, savior, traitor, legend. It depended on who told the story. And then they took his body. Maeve continued. Golden himself led them. Kadana Felsong opened the way. A name spoken with restraint. A former warden. A fallen one. Kaelan watched the fire as Maeve spoke. Flames bent and twisted, never holding the same shape twice. Why Illidan? Someone asked quietly. Maeve's gaze cut through the camp. Because demons do not waste vessels, she said, and a Illidan's soul is unfinished. That word lingered. Unfinished. The march to the vault was slow, not because the path was long, but because memory weighed heavy there. The cliffs rose like broken teeth. The sea below whispered constantly, as if rehearsing names it had swallowed. Wendge, Kaelan felt it. Not fear, recognition. The vault had been violated. Fell-scorch marks burned across ancient stone. Warden traps lay shattered, runes cracked open like bones. And among the ruins, figures moved that should not exist under the open sky. Demon hunters. The Illidari. They emerged from the shadows like living contradictions. Elves twisted by fell fire, eyes burning with borrowed sight. Horns, scars, tattoos carved deep enough to bleed memory itself. Weapons drawn, not against the Legion, against everyone. Maeve raised her blade. Stand down. A female demon hunter stepped forward. Her voice was calm, controlled, sharp as glass. We will not return to chains, she said. Not again? Kaelan stepped between them, slowly, deliberately. He did not reach for his sword. You are free, he said. But the Legion is not. Silence followed. Fire crackled somewhere behind them. The sea breathed. Another demon hunter laughed softly. You sound like him, Illidan. Inside the vault, chaos had become architecture. Cells lay open. Ancient horrors were gone, fled, or slain by Legion blades that did not care what side a monster once served. Felon shadow clung to the walls like rot. They reached the inner sanctum too late. Illidan's body was gone. Only shattered bindings remained, broken wards, and the lingering echo of a spell so vast it made the air hum. Maeve stood motionless. For a long time, no one spoke. Then one of the Illidari lowered his weapons. They will try to make him a vessel, he said, for Sargeras. The firelight flickered as if disturbed by the name. Kaelan closely, gnawed in calculation. If the Legion succeeded, the broken shore would be remembered as mercy. Outside, as the survivors regrouped and the night deepened, Kaelan addressed the Illidari. You were made to fight demons, he said. So were we. The Legion believes fear will keep us divided. Let's prove them wrong. Some demon hunters turned away. Some stayed, but enough stayed. Later that night, the campfire burned again. Smaller, quieter. Maeve sat apart, sharpening her blade with slow, precise strokes. The Illidari kept to the shadows, watching the flames as if afraid they might speak. Kaelan added another log to the fire. The flames rose briefly, then settled. Somewhere far beyond the stars, a ritual continued. And on Azeroth, beneath a sky that had not yet healed, Legionfall took another step forward, not toward victory, toward inevitability. When Valshara was entered, the first thing noticed was not the silence. Silence was everywhere already. What was noticed was that the forest was watching. The trees did not bend with the wind, nor did they move with shadow, as if every branch, every root, was trying to recognize those who entered. Kaelan Ashford felt it with his very first step. This was not the feeling of an ambush, it was a judgment. Valshara was an ancient memory still beating around the heart of Azeroth. A druid of the Cenarian Circle moved ahead of them. His steps were careful, but not fearful. He walked as one would enter a temple. "You do not raise your voice here," the druid said. "Here, the land listens." Kaelan nodded. He signaled the Legionfall troops. Armor was loosened, steps slowed. Swords remained sheathed. This was not a battlefield yet. But it would be. The first whispers came with the mist. They were not clear, not words. More like the echo of a familiar feeling. Regret, longing, the inability to name something that had been lost. "Nightmare," said a night elf scout, his voice instinctively lowered. "The Emerald Nightmare is seeping from here." Kaelan knew the name. Every commander did. But there was a difference between knowing and feeling. The nightmare did not scream like demons. It did not burn like fel. The nightmare waited. As they advanced, the corruption became more visible. Leaves darkened toward black. Branches grew at wrong angles. The ground seemed to breathe, but the breath was sick. Then Illidan Stormrage emerged from between the trees. Tall, silent, a presence that calmed the very soil. Yet Kaelan saw something in his eyes. Fatigue. Not the fatigue of battle. The fatigue of guarding something for thousands of years and now watching it rot. "Valshara is falling," Malfurion said. "And with it, the Emerald Dream." Tyrande Whisperwind was there as well. Priestess of a loon, but there was no serenity of prayer on her face. There was the hardness of a commander who had already decided. "Xavius has returned," Tyrande said. "And this time he is not only targeting the forest, but dreams themselves." Xavius. Kaelan knew the name from the history books. Ashara's old shadow, the first satyr, a stain that had been killed many times and returned many times, by Legion's command. "Ka'ilan Ast." Malfurion slowly shook his head. "No," he said. "This is the work of the Void, the whispers of Nzith. The Legion is merely exploiting the decay." That knowledge weighed heavily on Kaelan's chest. This war was no longer fought on a single front. The scream tore through the night. A druid was dragged out of his own dream and slammed to the ground. His eyes were open, but they were not seeing. He was whispering things, names, places, battles that had never happened. Then a figure darkened the sky. Y.S. Era of the green dragon aspect. The dreamer, a being as inseparable from the emerald dream as the dream itself, but no longer unblack. Her wings carried the shadow of decayed dreams. Asera. Tyrande whispered. "No answer, When the attack began, the Legionfall forces withdrew. This was not their battle. This was a moment of witnessing. Malfurion and Tyrande stood against Ysera. Druids wept. Arrows hesitated in mid-air. The final blow was struck by Tyrande. Light tore through the sky. The dragon fell. The ground trembled. The forest wept. Caelan knelt. He gave no orders. He spoke to no one. This was not a military moment. This was the moment a piece of the world died. Then Malfurion vanished. One moment he was there. The next, he was gone. The Emerald Nightmare had taken him. Xavius, Tyrande said. Her voice was no longer a prayer. It was a threat. Caelan rose to his feet. We will bring him back, he said. This was not consolation, nor was it a plan. It was a necessity. Inside the nightmare, time fractured. Night and day, dream and reality lost all separation. Legionfall soldiers remained at the threshold. They could go no farther. But Caelan pressed on. He knew Malfurion. A battle like this was not fought alone. When Xavius finally appeared, his form would not hold. Satyr, shadow, tree, rotting memory, all at once. You have returned again, Xavius said. You always do. Malfurion was bound. The dream itself was being turned against him. The battle was short, but devastating. When Xavius fell, this time he truly died. The nightmare retreated, but it left behind a hollow, not cleansed, but torn open. Malfurion was freed, but the price had been paid. Valshara survived. The Emerald Dream never would be the same. When they returned to Dalaran, Caelan delivered his report to Khadgar. But this report was not filled with numbers. The void is active, he said. There is a threat beyond the Legion, and Azeroth feels it. Khadgar was silent for a long time. I know, he said at last, and it is only beginning. Caelan looked back at Valshara one final time. There would be no victors at the end of this war. Only those who remained standing. Suramar did not fall like other places, it waited. From the cliffs overlooking the coast, the city looked untouched. Its walls shimmered beneath a dome of arcane light, so precise it felt deliberate, not defensive. No fell scars marked its stone. No Legion banners flew above its towers. To an untrained eye, Suramar appeared spared. Caelan Ashford knew better. Cities that survive untouched during wars are never innocent. They are either protected or complicit. The barrier parted as if acknowledging authority older than the conflict itself. Inside, the air changed. Not poisoned. Not clean. Controlled. Magic saturated everything, regulated to a degree that felt oppressive rather than comforting. Arquine flowed through the streets like currency and religion combined. Caelan walked beside First Arcanist Thalasra, watching the city with a tactician's eye. Nightborn citizens moved with practiced elegance, but their eyes betrayed something else. Dependence, calculation, fear carefully hidden beneath centuries of refinement. They have not seen the Legion as you have, Thalasra said quietly. Only its promises. Caelan stopped near a balcony overlooking the lower districts. Below, Nightfallen lurked in shadows, thin and shaking, exiles stripped of access to the Nightwell. A punishment more cruel than execution. Then the city has already chosen, Caelan replied. It just hasn't admitted it yet. Elisande summoned them at dusk. The Grand Magistrix awaited atop the Nighthold, surrounded by time itself. Arcane currents bent around her like obedient servants. When she spoke, it felt less like conversation and more like inevitability announcing itself. Have seen Elisande Zaid run again and again. Suramar survives by yielding. Resistance leads only to annihilation. Gul'dan stood beside her, unmoving, smiling. Kaelin's hand hovered near his blade, but he did not draw it. Killing Gul'dan here would not end the Legion. It would only prove Elisande right. You traded your future for certainty, Kaelin said. That is not survival. That is surrender. Elisande regarded him with something close to pity. You fight for a world that is already dying, she replied. I fight for my people. The meeting ended without bloodshed. That night, Suramar chose its side. Legion banners appeared by morning. The rebellion did not begin with an army. It began with whispers. Thalisra vanished into the lower districts, moving through secret paths known only to the exiled. Kaelin followed with a small Legionfall detachment, careful not to draw attention. This was not a battlefield. This was a city that punished memory. In the ruins beneath Suramar, they found them. The Nightfallen, once scholars, once mages, once citizens. Now hollow, shaking figures clinging to scraps of identity. Withdrawal had stripped them of grace and reason alike. Kaelin watched one collapse mid-sentence, fingers clawing at air that no longer carried magic. This is what your Nightwell costs, he said to Thalisra. I know, she answered. That is why it must end. The Arcanda seed was planted in secret. A fragile hope grown from nature and arcane balance. When its first fruit ripened, the change was immediate. Nightfallen straightened. Minds cleared. Names returned. Hope spread faster than rebellion ever could. But Elisande saw everything. Time itself bent at her command. The assault began at the city gates. Sentinels, Blood Knights, Silver Covenant Rangers, Legionfall commanders. The strike was clean, precise, overwhelming. For a moment, it almost worked. Then Elisande raised her hand. Time stopped. Kaelin felt it instantly. Muscles locked. Breath froze halfway through his lungs. Around him, warriors stood locked mid-stride, arrows hanging motionless in the air, spells suspended like glass sculptures. Only a few remained unfrozen. Talusra, Turande, Liadrin, Faeza, and Kailan. Elisande stepped forward, her voice echoing across centuries. I have seen this future, she said. You lose. Always. Kaelin met her gaze without blinking. Then, you have never seen a future where people refuse to stay still. Khadgar's counterspell cracked the spell's edge just enough. The stasis shattered imperfectly, violently. Warriors fell as time slammed back into motion. The battle turned chaotic. This was no longer a siege. Aitivas a race. They reached it too late. Gul'dan stood at the center of the ritual, fell and arcane tearing reality apart around him. Illidan's body lay at the heart of it, hollow and waiting. Elisande fell during the final push, her vision of the future ending where all tyrants' visions do. Short. Gul'dan died screaming. Illidan rose, not as a tool, not as a savior, as something forged by choice. Kaelin watched the transformation from a distance, understanding immediately what this meant. The Legion had lost control of its greatest weapon. The Nightwell was destroyed. Suramar survived. Free, but diminished. Thalasra stood among her people, no longer Grand Magistrix, no longer exiled simply leader. Kaelan departed without ceremony. There were no speeches left to give. Behind him, a city learned how to live without chains. Ahead of him, a shore waited. And beyond Aotearoa that would soon leave no corner of the world untouched. Kil'jaeden did not flee because he was weak. He fled because he understood something the others did not. From the moment Suramar fell and the Nightwell was silenced, the war changed its shape. The Legion still had numbers, still had worlds burning in its wake, but it had lost certainty. And Kil'jaeden, the deceiver, had never trusted brute force alone. The Tomb of Sargeras lay open like a wound that refused to close. Fell light spilled from its depths, pulsing in slow, deliberate rhythms, as if the structure itself were breathing. Legion war engines surrounded the island, layered defences upon defences, all built around one truth. This place mattered. Kaelan, Ashford stood on the broken shore once more, staring at the blackened stone rising from the sea. The memory of the first landing had not faded. It had hardened. Every fallen banner, every shattered blade, every name carved into silence lingered here. "This is where they want us," said Khadgar, his voice calm but edged. "And that means this is where we end it." Illidan Stormrage said nothing. He watched the tomb with a hunter's stillness, as if the structure itself might try to escape if he blinked. Maeve Shadowsong stood a few steps behind him. She did not look at Illidan. She watched the shadows, waiting for betrayal, even now. The assault was swift. Legionfall did not charge blindly this time. Air support struck first. Wardens disabled outer seals. Illidari tore through demon lines with brutal efficiency, not for glory, not for revenge, but because this was what they had been shaped to do. Inside the tomb, the air grew heavy. Nordvis fell. Vis present. Kil'jaeden waited near the inner sanctum, his massive form framed by fractured stone and infernal machinery. He did not roar. He did not threaten. He smiled, slowly, as if greeting inevitability. "You are persistent," he said. "I will give you that." Kaelan felt the pressure of the Demon Lord's gaze, even from behind the front line. This was not a creature that inspired fear through violence alone. Kil'jaeden inspired fear through understanding. "You have already lost," Kil'jaeden continued. "You simply refuse to see it." The battle that followed was unlike anything before it. Kil'jaeden did not stand his ground. He moved, repositioned, bent space with portals that snapped open and shut like wounds. Demons poured through imprecise waves, not reckless hordes. Every strike was calculated to delay, not destroy. He stalling, Kaelan realized. This isn't about us. Illidan's eyes narrowed. He's buying time. The truth revealed itself in a tremor that shook the tomb to its core. A portal opened behind Kil'jaeden, not to Azeroth, but beyond it. The twisting nether bled through reality, raw and violent, its colours wrong, its geometry hostile to mortal senses. Kil'jaeden laughed then. "You cannot follow," he said. "This war ends where your world cannot survive." Illidan stepped forward. "Yes," he said quietly, "it does." Kil'jaeden retreated through the portal. Illidan followed without hesitation. For a fraction of a second, Kaelan weighed the cost. Commanders were trained to measure risks, to preserve assets, to calculate survivability. Then he gave the order after them. The jump into the nether felt like being torn apart and reassembled by intent rather than matter. Gravity dissolved. Distance lost meaning. Sound twisted into colour. Thought itself felt fragile. Kil'jaeden's ship cut through the chaos like a blade, its engines burning with stolen souls and ancient power. The chase was relentless. Spells fired in arcs that curved impossibly. Demons clung to hulls that should not have held shape. Kil'jaeden turned as they closed in, fury finally breaking his composure. "You think you can end this?" he snarled. "The Legion is eternal," Illidan answered with steel and fire. The battle raged across the ship's deck, then its spine, then its heart. Kil'jaeden fought like a being who had already sacrificed everything except victory. When he fell, it was not with disbelief, but with bitter understanding. He laughed as the ship spiraled out of control. Argus filled the void ahead, a broken world, a bleeding titan. The true heart of the Legion laid bare. Illidan opened a portal back to Azeroth just before the ship slammed into the planet's surface. Kaelan felt the pull of it, the last violent lurch of a battle that refused to stay contained within a single world. They escaped. Kil'jaeden did not. Back on the broken shore, the sky was clear for the first time in what felt like years. The tomb's portal closed, its light fading into something manageable. Something finite. Kaelan looked gnawed in relief by cognition. This victory had not ended the war, it had exposed its core. Argus waited, and the final reckoning would not be fought on Azeroth's soil alone. Argus did not look like a conquered world. It looked like a corpse that refused to stop screaming. From orbit, the planet was fractured, its surface split by rivers of fell fire and veins of corrupted light. Storms spiraled across broken continents, not driven by wind, but by pain. The sky itself seemed torn, layers of green and red bleeding into one another, as if reality had failed to decide what Argus was meant to be. Kaelan, Ashford stood on the deck of the Vindicar as it emerged from the rift, but no one spoke. This was not a battlefield to rally troops upon. This was the source of the Legion's immortality, the reason demons returned again and again. The engine beneath the war. "This world is dying," Velen said quietly. "But it is not dead." Illidan Stormrage did not look away from the surface. "It's being used," he replied. "Drained, twisted, just like everything Sargeras touches." The Vindicar descended through hostile skies under constant fire. Legion artillery tracked them immediately. Fell cannons carved glowing scars through the clouds. Smaller Legion craft swarmed like parasites defending a wound. The ship shook violently as it crashed into the surface of Crokun. Impact. Metal screamed. Stone shattered. Fire rolled through the lower decks. Kaelan was moving before the alarms finished sounding. Orders were short, clear. Survival was instinct now, not doctrine. Outside, Argus felt wrong beneath their feet. The ground pulsed faintly, as if alive. Each step carried a subtle vibration, a reminder that this planet was not merely occupied, it was enslaved. They encountered the Krokul first, broken Draenei, those who never fled Argus. Their bodies were scarred by generations of fell exposure. Their eyes burned with resentment, grief, and something sharper. "You left us," said Hatuan, their chieftain, his voice raw. You escaped. We endured. Kaelan did not interrupt Velen when the prophet answered. Some accusations demanded to be heard in full. We survived, Velen said, so that one day we could return. That answer did not heal the wound, but it opened it. The Legion struck constantly. Slave pits, war forges, soul engines feeding power into the planet's core. Everywhere Kaelan looked, he saw the same design. Argus was not just a world. It was a battery. During the first major assault, the truth revealed itself fully. A Legion Titan construct fell, and with its destruction came a shockwave that rippled through the ground itself. Kaelan staggered as something vast screamed beneath reality. Magni Bronzebird's voice echoed through the communicator moments later, strained and urgent. "That's no machine," Magnus said. "That's a world soul. Argus has won, and it's being tortured, drained, twisted into fuel." Silence followed. Every soldier present understood what that meant. Demons did not resurrect because they were Legion. They resurrected because Argus was dying again and again for them. "This war ends here," Kaelan said quietly. Illidan turned toward him. "No," he replied. "This war must end here." The army of the light arrived days later. The Zenadar tore through the sky like a falling star, light cutting through fell clouds in defiance rather than dominance. Turolion led the charge. Light-forged Draenei followed, bodies marked by war that had lasted longer than mortal history could hold. And Alaria Windrunner walked among them. Changed. Void whispered around her like restrained thunder. Some soldiers stepped back instinctively. Kaelan did not. He had seen corruption before. This was something else. "This planet is screaming into the void," Alaria said, "and something is listening." Kaelan looked toward the horizon, where the land rose and fell like a living chest struggling to breathe. Argus bled, and every drop of that blood powered the Legion's final stand. Somewhere deep beneath the surface, at the core of the planet, something ancient waited, not to be saved, not to be redeemed, but to be freed. And as Legionfall and the army of the light advanced deeper into Argus, Kaelan Ashford understood the truth that no victory speech would ever capture. If Argus fell completely, the universe would survive. If Argus lived as it was, the universe would not. This was no longer about winning. It was about deciding what kind of end was acceptable. Antorus did not rise above Argus. It was embedded within it. The fortress was not built upon the world, but driven into it. Vast spires of blackened metal piercing the planet's surface like nails hammered into living flesh. Rivers of fell energy flowed upward along its walls, drawn not by gravity, but by purpose. Every pulse of green light carried pain from the world's soul below, refined into power. This was the heart of the Burning Legion. Kaelan Ashford stood at the edge of the staging ground as Legionfall and the army of the light prepared for the assault. No speeches were given. No banners were raised. Everyone present understood what Antorus represented. If this place stood, the Legion would never truly die. Illidan Stormrage studied the fortress in silence. To him, Antorus was not a stronghold. It was a promise finally close enough to break. Their command structure is inside, Turolion sat projecting a tactical display formed of light, portal networks, soul forges, prison sectors. If we strike fast and cut deep, the Legion will bleed. They will bleed regardless, Illidan replied. The question is how much they take with them. The assault began with fire and light tearing open the sky. The Vindikar and Zenadar unleashed everything they had. Shields flared, cannons roared. Sections of Antorus buckled and collapsed, but the fortress answered immediately. Legion portals ignited across its surface, vomiting forth demons by the thousands. Caelan moved with the ground forces, issuing rapid commands as formations shifted under constant pressure. This was no siege. There would be no holding ground. Only forward. Inside Antorus, the air was dense, heavy with layered magic. Fel, arcane, shadow, and something older pressed together, grinding against one another. The walls themselves pulsed faintly, as if the fortress were alive and aware of the intruders within it. They encountered the first of the true defenders soon after. War machines powered by tortured souls. Commanders forged from stolen Titan knowledge. Each enemy fell hard, and each death shook the structure as if Antorus resented the loss. Then the voice came, calm, measured, familiar, a Gramar, or what remained of him. The fallen Titan stood at the core of one of Antorus's inner chambers, his form bound in fell armor, his presence radiating restrained fury. He did not rage. He did not plead. He fought. The battle was brutal, every strike between beings far beyond mortal scale. When a Gramar finally fell, the fell binding shattered, and his spirit was released, free at last from the Legion's control. He looked at Caelan only once before fading, not in accusation, in acknowledgement. Deeper within Antorus, the truth of the Legion's cruelty became undeniable. Titan souls, the Pantheon, bound, tortured, siphoned of power to sustain Sargeras' endless war. Caelan felt the weight of it settle into his chest. This was not conquest. This was desecration on a cosmic scale. Free them, Illidan said, or none of this matters. The champions fought through the prison sectors with a desperation sharpened by purpose. One by one, the bindings fell. One by one, the Titan spirits awakened, weakened but unbroken. Ionar, Lifebinder, was the last to speak before withdrawing to the seat of the Pantheon. "We will prepare," she said. "You must finish this." At the core of Antorus, the final guardian awaited Argus, the world's soul made manifest. Suramar. He rose not as a saviour, nor as a victim, but as a weapon forged from agony. Chains of fel and void wrapped around his form, anchoring him to the Legion's will. Every movement sent shockwaves through reality itself. Caelan felt his knees buckle as Argus's presence pressed down upon them. This was not an enemy meant to be slain. This was a consequence meant to be endured. The battle was chaos given shape. Light and shadow collided. Titans channeled what power they had left. Mortals struck where they could, knowing each blow mattered not for damage, but for time. When Argus finally fell, the scream that followed was not one of rage it was relief. The Legion's resurrection engine died with him. Across the cosmos, demon souls began to fade, their paths back into reality severed at last. But the victory was incomplete. Caelan felt it before anyone spoke. A pressure building. A presence returning. Far above Azeroth, Sargeras turned his gaze home. And the war, though nearly ended, had one final wound left to open. It was not a world, not a fortress, not even a plane in the way mortals understood such things. It was a convergence of will and memory, shaped by beings who had ordered reality long before names like Azeroth or Argus had meaning. Light bent softly there. Time felt distant. Kaelin Ashford stood among powers that dwarf empires, and for the first time since the Broken Shore, he felt truly small. The Pantheon had returned. Amanthal, Norgannon, Ionar, Golganith, Khazgroth, a Grammar freed from torment, diminished yet intact. Titans, who had once shaped worlds now, gathered like survivors after a catastrophe, bound not by triumph, but by responsibility. Argus the Unmaker lay defeated behind them, his world soul severed from the Legion at last. The resurrection engine that had fueled endless demon rebirths was gone. But the cosmos did not exhale. IT tensed. "He is coming," Amanthal said, his voice carrying no fear, only certainty. "We have delayed him. We have weakened his cause, but Sargeras will not abandon his purpose." Illidan Stormrage stood apart from the others, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the void beyond the seat. He did not look impressed by gods. He looked impatient. "Then bind him," Illidan said, "or this ends the way everything else does." The Pantheon did not argue. They began to prepare. Energy flowed between them, ancient and disciplined, weaving a prison not of chains but of inevitability. This was not a battle they intended to win through force. It was a judgment. Kaelin watched the ritual take shape, understanding slowly dawning. They were not planning to kill Sargeras. They were planning to remove him from the story. The warning came too late. A shadow eclipsed the stars. Reality strained as Sargeras manifested above Azeroth, his form vast beyond scale, his presence a pressure that reached even the seat of the Pantheon. The burning titan raised his blade Gorable, dark with fel and void damned for the first time since the war began. There was no army left to stand in his way. Only moments. Only consequence. Amanthal's voice thundered across existence. Now. The Pantheon unleashed their power, seizing Sargeras across unimaginable distance, pulling him away from Azeroth, dragging him toward the prison they had prepared. Space warped. Time screamed. The universe itself resisted the removal of something so fundamental. But Sargeras struck once, not in anger, in defiance. His blade plunged into Azeroth. Even from beyond worlds, Kaelan felt the pain ripple outward, a cry that echoed through stone, sea, and soul alike. The planet shuddered. Something deep within it was wounded, not mortally, but profoundly. Then Sargeras was gone, dragged into the seat of the Pantheon, bound at last by the combined will of his brethren. Illidan Stormrage stepped forward as the prison sealed, his voice steady, resolute. "I will be his jailer." No one argue. Some battles end with victory, others end with duty. The seat of the Pantheon began to fade, withdrawing from reality, taking the Titan's and Illidan with it. As it vanished, Kaelin felt a strange emptiness settle where the war's constant pressure had been. The burning Legion was finished, but Azeroth was bleeding. Silithus burned under an empty sky. The desert had always been harsh, but now it felt raw, as if the land itself had been flayed. At the centre of it all stood the impossible Sargeras' sword, embedded deep within the planet, its presence warping the ground for miles in every direction. The wound bled light, Azerite, crystallized essence of Azeroth's world soul, seeping up from the depths where the blade had struck, power beyond gold, beyond magic, beyond restraint. Kaelin Ashford stood at the edge of the scar, listening as Magna Bronzebird pressed his palm to the ground, eyes glowing with borrowed awareness. "She's hurt," Magna said softly. "Not dying, but hurt bad." Ensgard. The heroes of Azeroth brought their artifact weapons forward. Ashbringer, Doomhammer, blades, staves, relics forged to face gods. One by one, they were plunged into the wound, draining the corrupted essence left behind by Sargeras' strike. The weapons dimmed. Their power faded. They had done their final duty. The bleeding slowed. Not healed but contained. Around them, others watched with very different intentions. Goblins measured, merchants whispered. Kings and warkeefs took note. Azerite was more than a wound, it was an opportunity. Kaelan understood then what the end of the Legion truly meant. The great enemy was gone, but the war had not ended. It had changed shape. The unity forged in desperation would not survive abundance. Fear had held Azeroth together. Power would tear it apart. He looked once more at the sword, at the scar it left behind, at the silent promise of conflicts yet to come. Legionfall had fulfilled its purpose. The universe still stood. But peace, Kaelan knew, had never been part of the design. The story did not end with fire and demons. It ended with a question. What would Azeroth do now that it was free to choose its own destruction? And somewhere deep beneath the world, the planet listened, still alive, still wounded, still watching.